Good morning. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Small Business Development Committee meeting. I'll call this meeting to order and ask Representative Chastain if he could open us in prayer.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for this day, this beautiful day that you've given us, and we want to thank you for all the many blessings that you've bestowed upon each and every one of us. And Lord, we ask for your guidance and your direction as we go forward today and even for the rest of this session, that you would just be with us and help us always try to make the best decisions for the great state of Georgia. We ask you to be with us even in this meeting as we start this morning. Thank you again for all that you've done for us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Representative Chastain. I appreciate that. Cool. All right. Ben, introduce yourself, and let's begin, my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good morning. I'm Ben Jordan from the Georgia Automobile Dealers Association. I'm joined today by my colleagues from GADA, Ms. Leah Kirshner, our President and CEO, Mr. Bill Morey, our President Emeritus, and some local franchise dealers who are with me today as well. On behalf of GADA, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to this committee once again. Thank you to Ms. Jordan Bailey for helping get us here today and get prepared. For our presentation, I'm going to give just a quick overview of what franchise local car and truck dealers do. I'll introduce our topics for today, which are market insights and workforce, and then I'll kick it over to the dealers themselves to share their stories and to provide some additional insights onto those topics. If at any point there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. With that, we can get started. We are the Georgia Automobile Dealers Association, and we represent the franchise new car and truck dealers in Georgia. Our dealers do business throughout the state, here in Metro Atlanta, up in the mountains, down in South Georgia, on the coast, and all points in between. Just a quick side note, GADA itself is also a small business. We have 23 employees, and in addition to education and advocacy, we operate a self-insured workers' compensation fund that insures over 20,000 employees in Georgia. If there's one point we want to make today, it is that we are local businesses. We are Main Street, not Wall Street. Our members create local careers. They invest millions in their locals' economies, and they support a multitude of local causes. As franchisees, our members are not owned by the car factories. They are owned independently. In fact, many dealerships are still family-owned, in some cases going back generations. In terms of economic impact, the numbers speak for themselves. The average dealership in Georgia employs 71 individuals, and collectively our members employ over 30,000 folks in Georgia. When considering direct and indirect employment, the economic impact accounts for over 70,000 jobs. One fact we're very proud of is that the average compensation for an employee at a franchise new car or truck dealership in Georgia is now over $90,000 annually. So those are strong middle-class jobs that are available in all of our communities. A few quick facts about what local franchise car dealers do. Well, of course, they are in the business of selling vehicles, and they sell both new and used vehicles. I think a few weeks ago, this committee heard from the Buy Here, Pay Here folks who, of course, sell only used vehicles. Our dealerships sell both new and used, and actually sell about 50% of used vehicles each year that are sold in Georgia. In addition to selling vehicles, franchise dealers perform safety-critical repair and maintenance services. They help customers enforce factory warranties. They'll help address safety recalls when those arise. Several dealerships operate body shops to help after a collision. Dealers arrange for financing for those customers who want to finance the purchase of their vehicle. Dealers will handle trade-ins, process title and registration. So franchise dealers are really with the consumers throughout the entire life cycle of the vehicle, from purchase through any safety or through any maintenance and repair needs, through trade-in, when you're ready to buy another vehicle. Because dealers perform these vital services, they were designated as essential businesses and part of our nation's critical infrastructure during COVID. And because dealerships are essential, state law in Georgia and throughout the country regulates the relationship between manufacturer and dealer. That set of laws is what we call our franchise law. And in Georgia, the state's constitution actually empowers you, the General Assembly, to regulate the relationship between automobile manufacturer and dealer to ensure that dealers continue performing their vital services in our communities, but more importantly, to ensure that the public benefits from that relationship. Today, we wanted to give you a quick update on the market as we have in years past. In years past, we discussed the impact of the coronavirus pandemic and how that was impacting new vehicle inventory, particularly with the shortage of microchips. The good news is that inventories are getting better, and with that, so too are vehicle sales. In 2023, the new vehicle sales increased over 8% compared to 2022, and analysts believe that was due to pent-up demand from the pandemic finally being satisfied by replenished inventories. In years past, we've also analyzed the new vehicle market and compared it by powertrain being just the kind of engine that powers the vehicle. So once again, in 2023, the vast majority of new vehicles sold in Georgia were powered either by gasoline or diesel. Those are internal combustion engine vehicles, the large slice of pie there with the abbreviation ICE. However, we continue to see an increase in interest in alternatively powered vehicles. So these would be vehicles such as hybrids, plug-in hybrids, or battery electric vehicles. Last year in Georgia, 15% of vehicles sold were those alternatively powered vehicles, with hybrids being the most popular. In fact, if there's one story we could share about the auto market for the past year, it's been the softening of demand for full battery electric vehicles and the increase in popularity for hybrids. So just last month in February 2024, Toyota, Ford, and Honda all reported major sales increases on a monthly basis, due in large part to hybrid sales. In fact, one Toyota executive went on record as saying that hybrids are just rockin', which is industry speak for Toyota had a good month. On the other hand, the picture for fully electric vehicles is more of a mixed bag, if you will. Yes, EV sales have increased over the past years, both in Georgia and nationally. In Georgia, 6.8% of all new vehicles sold were battery electric. Nationwide, that figure was more like 7.7%. But EV sales fell short of projections for many manufacturers, including for Tesla, which suggests that supply of electric vehicles is outpacing demand for those vehicles. And when that happens, as we've seen in the past year, these vehicles tend to pile up on dealership lots. So dealers and manufacturers have had to respond to those market conditions by cutting prices, adding incentives, and in many cases, manufacturers are now throttling back in production or shifting their production plans around. What does all that mean for our members, the local franchise dealers? Well, they'll tell you markets can be volatile and consumer preferences can shift. So our dealers are constantly having to adapt and to evolve to meet the moment. But dealers will sell customers whatever kind of vehicle they want. They're not pro-EV, they're not anti-EV. In fact, they will compete against each other to sell you the vehicle, and they will compete against each other to win your service business after the sale. And we believe that that's one of the key benefits of the franchise dealer system here in Georgia and throughout the country, that local dealers will compete against each other throughout the entire life cycle of the vehicle, and that local competition results in better prices and better customer service for us, the consumers. But to be successful, a dealership must have good people, and that's the other topic that we're going to bring to you today, which is workforce. I mentioned earlier that the average dealership in Georgia employs 71 individuals, and those folks perform a variety of services. Of course, you have the folks who work in sales. This would be salesmen and women, both traditional in-person salesmen and women, but also people who help process sales online or digitally. These are folks who work in business development, but also marketing and advertising. Again, these days there's both traditional advertising, but also digital advertising. On the right-hand column is what we call fixed ops. That's the service and parts department. Very important to the local franchise new car dealership. In the middle, business operations is there to help customers, but also to help support the other two departments, sales and service. So from a workforce standpoint, our biggest and most persistent challenge has been with automotive technicians. So what is an automotive technician? Well, these days, an automotive technician is much more than just a mechanic. These folks are highly trained and certified by the manufacturer to diagnose what goes wrong with a vehicle, to make the necessary repairs, and to perform the regular maintenance recommended by the manufacturer. These technicians will utilize special tools. They are highly trained and constantly being trained and retrained by the dealership and the manufacturer to handle the new vehicles that come online every year. What's the nature of the workforce challenge? Well, simply put, there's more demand for repair services from us, the driving public, than there is a supply of automotive technicians to perform those services. Why does that imbalance exist? Well, there's a couple factors at play, focusing first on the demand side. New vehicles these days are simply more sophisticated and more electronically advanced than they were generations ago. When you buy a new vehicle, it comes with all kinds of sophisticated equipment on board. And when that equipment glitches out, or when it's in a collision, or when it needs repairs, it simply requires a lot of resources, time, and expertise to get it fixed. Another factor is that we consumers are keeping our vehicles longer. Vehicles are being made better than they were generations ago. They're being made to last longer than they were generations ago. And they are, in fact, lasting longer, and we're keeping our vehicles longer. The average age of a vehicle on the road now in the United States is 12 and a half years. And that's a good thing for us consumers, but the longer we keep our vehicles, the more repair services those vehicles tend to need. Shifting over to the supply side, why is it that the supply of automotive technicians is not keeping up with demand? A couple factors at play. One, of course, is natural attrition. These are folks who enter the industry but leave for whatever reason. But then there's also a class of very highly trained and experienced automotive technicians, many of whom are approaching retirement age. They are in the baby boom generation, and they are slowly but surely exiting the workforce. And those positions are not being backfilled enough by folks entering the industry, either at the entry level or graduating from local technical schools. So what can be done to address this particular workforce challenge? Well, first and foremost, we believe that young folks ought to at least be encouraged to consider a repair and automotive service. And why, might you ask? Well, first and foremost, experienced technicians can make very good money, well over $100,000 annually. In addition, technicians receive regular training from the dealerships and from the manufacturers. The dealerships and the manufacturers will invest in these individuals. So these folks are constantly developing and honing their skills, and those skills are transferable. If you work at a Ford dealership, for instance, up north, and you want to move to Georgia like so many other folks these days, there'll be opportunities for you in Georgia because technicians are in high demand. We also believe that business and government, particularly educational institutions, have an important role to play in encouraging people to consider these careers and to prepare them for success in those careers. As you all know, we have a great resource here in Georgia with the Technical College. system of Georgia, TCSG. Right now, there are 22 programs, I believe, or 22 TCSG schools offering automotive technology and service programs. We at GADA believe strongly in the mission of TCSG, and we have endowed a scholarship at TCSG to support students in those automotive technology programs. In addition to that, our members themselves, the local dealers, are working with the high schools and the career academies and the technical colleges to try to recruit more people into this industry. And we've got one great success story to share about that, which comes from Augusta. A couple years ago, the Cadillac dealership in Augusta announced that it was closing, not selling, actually just closing down operations. At the time, the president of Augusta Tech, Dr. Jermaine Worrell, saw that as an opportunity. He wanted to transform that already built dealership facility from one in the business of selling and servicing vehicles to one where students could come and learn actually how to sell and service those vehicles. But Dr. Worrell needed to raise private capital in order to purchase the land and the facility itself. So the local dealers there saw this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to address this persistent workforce challenge. And thanks to the support of a number of local dealers and other foundations in Augusta, they were able to raise enough money to do that. So they're mentioned here: Jim Hudson Automotive Group, Master Buick GMC, and the Gerald Jones Automotive Group all raised enough money. And starting next year, the Jim Hudson Automotive Institute in Augusta Tech, which used to be the Cadillac dealership in Augusta, will be offering classes in automotive technology and service and sales to students enrolled in that program. We're very proud of that local success story coming from Augusta. And we believe that Dr. Worrell's vision, came to being in large part due to the fact that the local dealers stepped up to support their community and to support the industry. As I mentioned before, local dealers create local jobs. They invest in their local communities, and they support a multitude of local causes. With that, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I'd love to welcome the dealers that we have here today to present to you to provide some more insights both into the market and to workforce.
Cool. Cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. Ben, what I'd like to do is hold the questions till we get all the presentations, and then at that time we'll open the floor to questions. Thank you. Senator, it's good to see you. All we see now is Senate bills. That's all. Thank you. All right. I know I'm going to mess up this pronunciation. Jareen Barranco.
Yes, Grenade Barranco.
Grenade. Okay, thank you.
Very close.
It looks like ladies first.
Oh, okay. Well, I really just want to thank you for allowing me to be here. Good to see everyone. And kind of piggyback on what Ben was saying as far as the workforce is concerned. And what I'm seeing is that there's so much technology being developed, both with the vehicles and, with charging stations, and, we need the infrastructure and all of that. But in the cars, the technology has changed so much, and it's continuing to change, that I recommend to all of my customers, if it makes sense for them, to lease their vehicles. Mainly because the technology changes so much, you really do want to be up to date on the latest, because a lot of these features are safety features. And we see it every day. People think that it doesn't matter, but then, of course, if something happens, they wish that they had. And so we need technicians. But I think one thing that is, we absolutely do need technicians, and we will continue. But one thing that is putting a drain or a strain on our technicians is, the fact that it's a lot of user error. So, customers will come in and say, my car did this. I had one lady who said that her car was haunted because, it stopped without her putting the brake on, right? But so she was putting her car in the service department and wanted to loan her car and all of these things. So, but what we've decided to do is invest in product specialists, right? Because what customers really need right now is training on the vehicles. And so while we're looking for technicians, that's absolutely important. And I think maybe we could have a program where they come in as product specialists and then go into a program where they learn maybe express tech and then a full-fledged technician. But I just want to bring that point up, and I'm not sure if you guys can do anything about it. No, but as far as workforce, like I said, I work at Mercedes-Benz at Buckhead, and we employ 178 people. And that's just one dealership in the middle of the city. But we need more, frankly. We need 55 technicians. Right now we have 35, and 12 express techs. So I'm thinking, my idea is that we invest as a dealership and in more product specialists, because I think that'll keep a lot of cars out of the service department in the beginning while we're all in this transition of learning all of the new technology that, cars are going to have to speak with cars, they're going to speak to the roads, they're going to speak to the manufacturers via over-the-air features that customers will have access to. All of this is new. So just kind of prepare for that when you buy your cars or when you hear people talking about buying cars. It's not the same thing as it was even 12 years ago, where you maybe want to, what do you call it, where you put the little blinker on and when safety features that are easy and we all are familiar with today, right? We have things coming up that will not be familiar, and we're going to need someone to train us as well as the customer on those things. And that's my main point, I guess, for right now. Thank you.
All right, Senator, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of this committee. I would like to focus, and I'm glad that my good friend, whose parents I've known for close to 40 years now, is here and to share her experiences with us. I've been in the car business now for a franchise car dealer for over 30 years. I'm aging myself, by the way. But what I want to focus on is workforce development as it pertains to the back-end operation of car dealerships. That's the part, as Ms. Baranko's already said, is critical to the growth and really the future of our business. If you recall, and I'm old enough to remember, where there were mechanical repair shops in high schools. High school's kid, I even took one when I was in high school. I had an opportunity to take a car apart. That's when I first fell in love with automobiles. I put some lifters in a 1967 Malibu. So that's what I did back in high school. Those kind of programs don't exist in high schools anymore. But yet, the kind of technicians and the kind of experience they need to repair these cars is akin to what a computer programmer would need. My colleagues would tell you here that we can't get wrenches and scopes and those kind of things to repair cars. We really need computers to tell us which component on that car we need to go to repair. And one of the big investments that I know this body has made was a big investment in TCSG over in the South DeKalb area, where we had a groundbreaking ceremony building a huge facility over there to look at logistics and how do we expand the offering in our technical schools for automotive repair. And I think it's critical for this body to know, because that really now is the primary source for those that we get and recruit into our business. The other opportunity we have for young people, because I recruit from the local schools in my community down in Henry and some in DeKalb, by the way, and the surrounding communities. We do have kids where we can start in the Ford business. We call it quick lane. So we start them doing quick repairs on cars, tire, brakes, and batteries, those kind of repairs, where someone can at least get some experience. And then from there, we start cycling them through the younger ones that show promise through some of the programs that's offered by the manufacturers that we represent. And we train our own. But that takes some time to do. But that's how, in the last probably 10 years, I've gotten the roughly 25 techs that I have in my mechanical department to be able to service the cars and the traffic that we have in my dealership. And we also got to remember this industry has evolved. As my good friends from GAD has mentioned, automobiles are evolving a lot. It went from the ICEs, the internal combustion engines, to what we see today. And Ford has a program like every manufacturer in the state for EVs. Ford's program is called Model E, and we are a Model E dealer. But to become certified as a Model E dealer, Ford requires us to make a significant investment in not just technology, but also the training of our technicians. And here's an area now where technicians are being asked to do things that engineers typically would do in the past. And I just happen to be one of those car dealers who started off my career as an electrical engineer, undergraduate, by the way, and I worked for a company, three-letter company, IBM, and I kind of migrated from there into business, and I got into the car business. So I kind of understand, with an engineering background, the intricacies and the complexities of working on these EVs. But the younger kids that we send in our car business today, they don't have that kind of knowledge, and I think it's critical that certainly as state officials, we look into this workforce development in all areas that this skilled workforce is going to need as we move further into the future. So those are my comments, Mr. Chairman and members of this committee.
Representative Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to kind of give you an example or give you the prospect of a car dealer from a small town in Georgia, and where that kind of comes from. So again, my name is Lehman Franklin, and I'm the dealer of Chevrolet, Buick, GMC, and Toyota in Statesboro. And my grandfather started this business in 1940. My uncle took it over, I think, when he was about 27 or 28. He's 83 now, and he's turned it over to me, and I've been running it as a dealer since then. And so one thing that he always says, he jokingly says that all commerce begins and ends at the dealership, in the store, and he's joking about it, but in a way, there's some truth in it, because the dealership in a small town is, I would say, probably the biggest economic driver in that community. It's a massive force for that in the small towns, and not only all the taxes that we pay, but the people we train, the employees that we host, and all that. It's a major force. And if you go to the other small towns where you see that dealerships have closed up or consolidated or things like that, you can see the impact. So it's a very good thing. And speaking a little bit about the workforce, it's always been a challenge. Dealerships are divided up in probably 3 or 4, 5 different areas sometimes, and it takes a unique individual to be able to work in those different areas. I mean, the salesperson's a type of personality, parts is another one, service is a different one, and selling service is another one, body shop, and you got to be able to coordinate all those different aspects. But it's a perfect example of the entrepreneurial spirit and the independence that America still has, and it's embodied in the used car dealer or the new car dealer, to be able to do all that. Because when we have challenges, we just have to fix it and find it and solve the problem. Like you've heard today, one of the major problems we have is workforce, and we've always had that. We don't look for really outside help. I mean, obviously we want to do it, but we just solve the problem and the need. And so I personally invest in the local technical schools that we, train the future employees. But to get a technician from being an oil changer to a master tech is around 10, 11 years, would you say, something like that? Every store has to have at least one, most have 2. But to get that process from that individual from, just starting out to a master tech is not only the training, but you have to almost become like a surrogate father for some of these guys. I mean, you've got to, you have to life coach in a way, because you invest so much in individuals, and you want them to stay, and, the grass is always greener in different situations, and just, things, life come up. So you have to be there, and that happens all across in every dealership, I would say. And the challenges that we face is, we talk about EVs, You know, we want to sell anything and everything. So I think that with the EV, this new emerging EV market or challenges, it's a great thing. I think the EV car is a great product. I like selling them. You know, I think you guys probably sell a lot more than I do. It's harder in the rural areas. You know, when I come from, it's all truck country. It's all agriculture. So everybody wants a truck. But the EV vehicle is a good product. I think one of the reasons we might have seen a downturn or a slow in the growth is because we're just trying to do too much too fast. If we just give it time, I think that it's going to be a great evolving market for Georgia. We just have to let the customer kind of catch up a little bit and wrap their head around it, but especially where I'm coming from, my part of town. But
Well, thank you. Now we're going to open it up for questions. Representative Chastain?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate everyone being here this morning, all the presentations. And I appreciate this association because like in our little town up in Blue Ridge, I just wrote down a couple of things, but Mountain Valley Motors, Bill Holt Chevrolet, Tim Ford, who I don't think he's relation to Ford, but they're involved in everything, as Representative Franklin was talking about, in our community, charity, anything you go, T-shirts, ball game, all that kind of stuff. So it's very important to the community. One question: I know when you go to a dealership, you go into the showroom and it's all pretty and everything looks good, but the service department, I know when we loan money to dealerships, we look at the service department pretty heavily for cash flow. Is that still? I know we used to like to see where the service department would almost like take care of the expenses of the dealership, just as a general rule. Is that still?
Yeah, fixed absorption.
Yeah.
Yeah. We prefer to have the service department cover all the expenses and everything else is what we live on, I suppose.
Well, ideally, that would be.
Ideally, it's not what happens, but I mean, all the time,
Service
but.
absorption average is anywhere from 60 to 75% or even go higher. In my store, it hovers around 70%. So they uncover 70% of the fixed ops on the entire dealership. And that helps out particularly during the slower months and the colder parts of the slower parts of the season.
Yeah. I guess total absorption would include the used car department as well, but as far as
We
just
don't
fixed.
include used cars.
We don't include, but used cars are super important because obviously we have to do a lot of service work on them.
Right.
So it all does roll in together.
One other question, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
On the special incentives, someone mentioned special incentives maybe even for the EVs. But would that be more like lower prices, lower interest rate, financing, lower down payment, anything like that for special incentives?
Well, I just want to say that,
Mercedes has Audi incentives on it.
yeah, because, so in last March, I tell the story of, we looked up and we had 60% EVs on our lot. And it was a disaster. I mean, we didn't have any sales plan for them or anything, so we had to develop a market. Well, we were able to meet with Mercedes. Thankfully, they're local. And we were able to meet with them sort of in an emergency meeting and come up with higher residual rates for these cars, higher money factors for the EVs. So right now, I'll just say I just leased a $102,000 EQE for $538, and I told my hairdresser, it's not. I mean, yes, I have a discount, but we're offering very low. I mean, I can do a EQB for $500 and something right now for everybody, and that's because of the cooperation with Mercedes and us, and now it's a national program. Mm-hmm.
And can I just comment on EVs for a moment? On the Ford side, of course, we have the Lightning, we have the Mach-E, and we have some hybrids that we sell. And I think it's no secret that Lightning has not been a top seller. We've done well with the Mustang Mach-E, which is by far our best seller. But in addition to, and Ford did not put incentives on them when the cars came out, they did incentivize. Anytime sales slow on a particular car line, the manufacturer can always incentivize them. Otherwise, they want to make as much as they can off of us selling each one of them at full sticker. One thing that's critical for us with EVs is understanding what the investment is for all of us as car dealers to be able to sell those automobiles. We just can't say to Ford Motor Company, we want to be a Mach-E dealer. and we can say that, but they can say, okay, here's what you have to do. And for Ford Motor Company, we pay well over $40,000 a year just for the training for our technicians to be able to sell EVs. Plus, we're required to invest about $300,000 in infrastructure. If we are to be an EV dealer, we're required to have fast charging stations as well as about 5 or 6 other two-phase charging stations. That's well over the fast charging station. Each costs about $80,000 to $90,000 a piece, of which I have 2 of them sitting in my parts department that I really don't know what to do with until I get the infrastructure put in the dealership. So there's a huge investment that dealers have to make just to be able to sell those automobiles. And one of the things that I think would be helpful, at least from the state level, is as we, as dealers, invest in that kind of infrastructure. I know there's some federal tax incentive, but perhaps one of the things the state may want to consider is incentivizing dealers with some state incentives as well. I don't know what that incentive should look like or what it would be, but I just kind of put it out there as something that would help all the dealers in the state of Georgia come to the conclusion that some of us have come to, that we cannot live and grow our businesses without that significant investment we have to make in EVs.
Well, Senator, that's a great idea, and I'm going to put the monkey on Ben to come up with some suggestions. So, good. Okay, we've... Representative Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for this panel. I am invested with drivers on the road. Trying to get driver's ed back into the high school, so the workforce development, like shop class, I understand how important it is to push it to a younger age, so they're more developed when it's time for them to work. So I'm on the higher ed committee as well, and we do workforce development grants. TCSG is pushing, I guess, tuition reimbursement for high demand fields. My question to you all is, how are you putting these technicians on the list for the high demand fields in Georgia? Like the product specialist, how can we help push that to be one of the high demand fields that we do tuition reimbursement, that we do grants with?
Excellent question, by the way.
I guess I can just tell you, I guess it would be education, probably, that there is that opportunity for them to go into would probably be the best way, especially coming out of high school. And going into the technical college, in my experience, has probably been the greatest benefit that we've had for doing the education and a work study at the same time. You know, go to school a little bit, then do the work as well. But we've invested, like I'm sure that you guys as well, but we invest a lot of money in the education just because of the program, as well as with the OEM program, and then we train up our own. But I've found that the best way to train a technician to get them from A to B, or to get them into like even a C-level tech or a B-level tech, is just to do it myself, and have a master tech or another B-level tech take him as an apprentice inside the store and do it. But to be able to get the that interest, that spark of interest to begin with, they need to realize that is that opportunity that they can make over $100,000 easily if they stick with it and learn, to get them in the door, because they do have all these other opportunities that they can go do, or they can go into the store and then maybe leave. But if they're aware of that and to move in that process, then I think that's probably the greatest thing, especially on that high school level.
We got to give some shout outs to GADA, by the way, because they're our advocate group that represent the franchise dealers. There's other groups, used car dealers and Metro Atlanta automobile dealers, in the area. But these groups that support us, they're the ones that we rely on to educate lawmakers about some of the issues that are critical to our business. And I would hope that GADA, and I know they do an excellent job, which is why they recruited us to be here this morning, can share with you some of the needs that we need within the high school level, technical school level, and et cetera, throughout the system.
And I'm sure you guys talk about this all the time, excuse me. I was saying, I'm sure you talk about this all the time, but I want to reiterate the importance of education in all of this. We can train technicians, and maybe we can come up with some programs, but most, like you said, most dealers have an internal training program. But what I'm finding is it's difficult to have to find young people who are truly educated in a similar way that in a way that we need them to be prepared when they get out of school. So we're having to teach basic, I mean, literally like handwriting. How do you, I had a gentleman, 21-year-old, and I said, I asked him something, he said, well, I can't write. He can read and type and do everything like that, but he couldn't write. And so there are a lot of gaps. And he said nobody ever taught. They don't teach handwriting, apparently, where he went to school. But it's not just him. This has become almost an epidemic, in my opinion. That may be a bit strong. But we're having to supplement the education of our employees by literally teaching people basics. And then we move on to how do you do the job. So I don't know how you guys can help with that, but education is very important.
Thank you. That's a great point. I'm going to brag about my local technical college, South Georgia Tech. They've recently built the new high school right across the street, and our dual enrollment program is very good. They reach down into the high school, attract the students, and a former president of South Georgia Tech, Sparky Reeves, got Aaron's Rents to give us a race car and the equipment necessary for the race car to operate. So he created a high-performance automotive curriculum, and he would take the race car to the different high schools. And young men and women, their eyes would bug out when they saw that race car and when they cranked the engines, and was able to create an interest and was able to get people involved in the automotive program that way. But I got off on a tangent, I'm sorry. But Chairman Tarvin?
Mr. Chairman, very interesting to hear. There's 2 Chevrolet, 2 Dodge, a GMC Pontiac Buick. Now we have maybe one Chrysler Dodge, 1 Chevrolet, and a couple of Ford dealers in those 2 counties. We had Rossville Boulevard was $1 million mile, nothing but car dealerships for a mile, and it was called $1 million mile. It was used cars, but it was a huge, huge business. My point is, maybe for Ben or Bill, what have we seen attrition as far as consolidation, coming together, number of dealers? I don't want to go back 50 years, but what have we seen in the last 20 years? Does anybody have a number on, have we gone from 100 to 50, or what do we see in Georgia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can give a quick attempt to answer that, and then maybe some of my colleagues could help clarify. My understanding is that particularly after the bankruptcies of 2007, 2008, 2009, there was a real reduction in the number of new vehicle franchises. Part of that was through the way the bailouts worked with the federal government. But at least in my lifetime, I know there were a number of dealerships that were forced to close or sell at that time. I think going back years before then, Bill and Leah could speak to it through the years in our industry, we've seen a good bit of sales and consolidations. The last couple of years, my understanding is the number of stores have stayed relatively stable throughout the country. And I think that's a testament to what was mentioned earlier, just about the adaptability of the franchise dealers, how they're always constantly having to evolve and work with new technologies like digital retailing. So I know we've seen a number of reduction over the years, I think in the past decades for certain. My understanding is that most of the dealership numbers have stayed relatively stable in recent years. But going back to the bankruptcies, there were a number that were forced to close then.
Follow up quickly. You know, I mentioned our population has exploded so much. Cars, when I was younger, I literally probably never put over many cars I put 20,000 miles on. I would buy a new car every year. Well, the truck I just still have parked there at the farm was a 2005. And I drove that thing for all those years, almost 20 years, and we never did that before. You know, we saw the cars in the 60s lasted a little longer, and then up in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, cars just weren't built as well. And now we've seen a vehicle that will last the 20 years and still be a very good vehicle. But it's amazing, cars have lasted that much longer. The population has exploded, yet we're seeing as many car dealers as we still do. So this is something that's interesting to me, and I would like to see the statistics on what percentage of car dealerships we have now compared to 20 years ago and I remember when the dealers were forced to go out, but not, you know, any time within the next couple of years. So I may be here that long. Thank you.
Will do. Thanks.
May I speak on that quickly? So I don't know the Georgia numbers, but I know back in 2018, looking at national numbers from the NADA, and there were 18,000 dealers rooftops, and the latest one that I saw was 16,700 and something. So, and that was last year. So there is consolidation in the market. I think a lot of what I see now are, like I said, because of the technology. I mean, the technology is completely changing everything, every aspect of the dealership operations in a good way. We're just progressing. But a lot of dealers are traditional dealers, and they're, getting older and retirement age, and just like, I don't want to be bothered with it. I don't. So they are selling. That's what I'm seeing. I see a lot of older dealers who are just kind of like, oh, for sure. Oh, well, 100%. Yes.
I want to add to that too, because being a smaller dealer, you have their challenges with that in itself, but then you also have a higher healthcare cost that you have to have. You have to have a certain amount of employees and inventory issues. I mean, if you're consolidated more, then a lot of those expenses that you have to pay anyway can be transferred into something else. I mean, like speaking about EVs, we have to have certain EV investment to even sell an EV. So I think I'm at over about 400,000 right now with mine, and I'm a very small dealer. So to transfer that to a dealer that may have just one franchise is a huge expense, and you've got to do it, whether you've got that or you've got 8 different franchises. So it makes it super hard. I think healthcare would be probably one of the greatest challenges that we have. We have to pay an extraordinary amount for them to be, to have good health care. And luckily we have Georgia Southern or some other, operation in there. If they have a spouse there, they get their health care. So that helps me out a lot. But I'm not, a lot of the dealerships aren't as fortunate as I am.
Chairman Williams.
To your point, Mr. Franklin, I know somebody could really help you with your health care costs there in Statesboro, but I'm in the insurance business, so I always have to plug that. No, I just wanted to thank you all for being here today. Like you said, car dealers, they're part of Americana. When your football teams and your scoreboards and your churches and everything, they're supported by the car dealers. And I'm from Cordele, and we lost Hurt Motor Company back in 2007, and that had been there for 100 years, and that's where we bought our cars. But I want to thank you all for being here, and I was going to give a shout out to Bill Morey. I'm sure he could enlighten us because he and Henry Ford, I believe, are personal friends. But no, thank you all for being here today, and we really appreciate y'all.
Cool.
Mr. Chairman, I got to say this about Bill.
What number?
I was a page in 1963, and I literally asked, on what I was thinking, you think you're still 40. I asked him if I thought he served here when I was page. I really asked him that question, and I was serious. But it was a slip.
Not quite.
Not quite. Let me get that off. All right. Well, Bill, we thank you very much for your many years and dedication and expertise and wisdom. So thank you very much. I've considered him a dear friend forever, it seems. And I appreciate y'all sharing y'all's experiences within the dealership industry and how it affects. If any of the members have any more questions, I encourage y'all to, because I've got a couple myself, but I don't want to take up everybody's time. It's a busy time of the session. But with that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for the presentation you make, and thank you for the opportunities you give the citizens of the state of Georgia. So, meeting adjourned.